Hello everyone and welcome to your NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 2nd of October 2023. What a difference a week makes, and all the happenings in and around our wonderful club and with NARSA as well. So yeah, lots to cover this week. Woofed, I think is probably the best word to use. It's Gary here again, and I guess we'll start off with the Rangers stuff. I guess knowing what we know now, what turned out to be the inevitable end to Michael Beale's tenure as the 18th permanent manager of our beloved football club happened yesterday morning, and I think it was probably the best decision for everyone concerned. It just wasn't working out, and it became quite obvious to everyone that the guy was fighting a losing battle, despite some of the results that we had recently, notwithstanding the results. Or the result on the weekend. They are, a little bit of a losing battle he was fighting. I think probably from around about the Celtic game, I think was when we started to kind of say, maybe this guy just doesn't have what it takes. And obviously the kind of folklore of not winning any of the big games that he had to win during his tenure with us. Personally, I was very excited when he was coming back, and I fully subscribed at the time to the Beale was the brains behind Gerrard's success theory, but over time that kind of got disproved, a little bit debunked, didn't it? With the benefits of hindsight, in terms of the decision made, I think Rangers got this one spot on. They gave him just over 10 months. He was officially announced on the 28th of November last year. He had 2 transfer windows and appropriate financial support and autonomy over the entire football department, especially when Ross Wilson had left. And in that 10 months, he was proven just not to be what we want and what we need in the manager's chair. I mean, he did give us some domestic improvement last season, absolutely no question about it. We were struggling big time when he came in, particularly away from home domestically, but the key to his reign, as I just mentioned there, was that he just didn't win the games that mattered, did he? And yes, he did have an Old Firm victory at the end of last season, but nothing but pride was on the line at that particular time, and look at what he oversaw in the first Old Firm game of the season. Just a tepid, uninspired loss when that mob were really there for the taking. It was an opportunity for him to turn the corner and he just couldn't do it. I mentioned last week that I thought that the main issue that was upsetting the fans was the fact that very obviously our standards were not being met on the field, and if we had something to cling to in terms of a forming style that everyone was bought into, everyone in the squad, that is, and the fans of course, was bought into, that might have been something. But the real challenge was that we didn't seem to have that, and we didn't have consistency in team selection, partly due to injuries, yes, partly due to just trying to kind of try out, I guess, the new players that were there as well. And we seemed to just have, completely sucked the life and passion out of the team. And the caveat to that is that yes, we did have 4 victories on the bounce of 4 clean sheets prior to Saturday, but when the team are still being booed off the pitch, not every time, but when they're still being booed off the pitch, I think it's very obvious that we aren't as a club where we should be, and the team certainly as a club are not where they should have been as well. And maybe in the fullness of time, Michael Beale will prove to be a very competent football manager, but he did his best with us, and it was nowhere near good enough, quite honestly, not even close. So where do we stand now? We have, of course, Stephen Davis confirmed, Stephen Davis and Alex Rae as the interim management team for right now, while the search is underway for a new manager. And as a club and as fans, we're kind of back in the all too familiar spot of unsettledness while we're looking for a replacement. I'll be very interested to see how long the club decide to take, if they decide to give the lads a chance to see what that looks like, or to kind of stop the bleeding and just don't put them in a very difficult position and continue wholeheartedly with the search going forward. I'm not sure. I don't get a sense just yet as to what that's going to look like. But I think the only positive part of this is that as a collective fan base, we get to wonder about what's next, and who's John Bennett and James Bisgrove are able to attract to the club that will get us a bit more excited for the future. If we get the appointment right, I think the season is still salvageable. I do truly believe that. We're only 7 games in. If we don't get it right, we wait too long, we see the guys that are incumbent right now are struggling, and we just kind of flounder around. then we're already planning for next season, which is completely deflating, and again feels all too familiar for me anyway. If I had any say on it, I'd go for. I'd go. My favourite would be Barry Ferguson until the end of the season and see how that pans out. Now the caveat to that is that I'll get ridiculed. I know for some, some folk we're kind of divided on Barry Ferguson. I think as a support in general, some people love him. I'm in the I love him camp, and some people not so much just because of the way he's gone about his criticism of Rangers since he retired from playing, and for his. And he's had a bit of a checkered past in management. He had some difficult times down south. Did reasonably well up here. My main thing is he's a Rangers man through and through, and he would absolutely understand what we're all about and get the team and the squad to understand what we're all about pretty quickly. Now, having said that, what is Stephen Davis? He's the exact same, former captain, successful captain as well, most decorated British outfield player in history. Very, very well respected. Member of the football community. So I guess maybe the kind of yin to the yang is that he has widespread support, I guess, is probably the best way to say it, within the club and maybe within the fan base as well. But something like that. And Alex Ray, of course, he's a blue nose through and through as well, and had the opportunity to play with the club too. So maybe we actually have a version of that anyway. And my pipe dream of having him there would be kind of just out to lunch, as they would say over here. But something like that. I don't know if there's a role maybe at some point down the line for Kevin Thompson. As some sort of assistant or first team coach or something like that. He's in the same mode as the other guys that I was just talking about there as well. And if we were going to go a wee bit further afield, I don't know. I never actually got confirmation of this from the club, but I think I also liked Frank Lampard too. And he hasn't exactly set the heather on fire with his appointments. But if you look at the state of Chelsea right now, and you look at the state of Everton right now, he was just one of a number of people who were in there trying to stop the rot in both clubs and didn't manage to do it. So I'm not sure that's exactly a fabulous gauge on that. But as you can tell, folks, I have absolutely no clue. But this is the kind of exciting part where you're like, right, okay, the window of possibility is fully wide open, and we'll see what we see over the next wee while. The chances of me being on the selection committee for the new manager is very, very slim, as in zero. And that's why I think I'm letting my heart rule my head a wee bit. But I guess you never know how it's going to go. And the bizarreness of this last week, as I kind of alluded to at the top of the show there, is that the news about Michael Beale's exit from the club wasn't the biggest news for NARSA this past week. As you'll likely know by now, your NARSA executive took the unprecedented and very, very difficult decision to outright cancel the 2024 convention, which was slated to take place in New York City. I don't mind telling you folks that this one really hurt my heart. It really did. I told you last week that we were having an executive meeting to discuss the next steps, and quite honestly, I thought we'd go on the call, we'd discuss the particulars, we'd crunch some numbers, and then collectively fully decide that we were going to proceed. And it just didn't quite work out like that. And it was more really once we started to collectively organise ourselves on the financial realities and the very real and present risk that was introduced as a result of that, became more and more crystal clear to me and to everyone else that it just wasn't something we could or should commit to. I was actually sharing my screen on the call. It was a Zoom call, and we were just working together in the Excel spreadsheet and basically just doing some financial scenario analysis. And there were just no scenarios that did anything to convince the executive as a whole, as a collective, that it was prudent to proceed with the convention. And as I mentioned, this is, of course, is unprecedented, with my only experience of not proceeding due to the global pandemic that shut us down for 2020 and 2021. And that decision was made for us. It wasn't really us making that decision, but when we're coming off of a significant financial loss from the Toronto Convention this past June, we just simply can't afford to take another potentially greater loss in 2024. As I'd said on my communication email from earlier today, that would be a going out of business plan, and that's not something that I or the entire NARSA executive are interested in at all. So we've made the tough choice to completely pull the pin on the event, take a bit of a breather. Someone emailed me earlier saying, enjoy your gap year. which maybe we call it that. That's got a bit of a more positive potential spin on it. But yeah, take a bit of a breather and then get fully behind our bid for Kissimmee 2025. It's disappointing on a whole bunch of levels, but quite simply the lack of confirmed support via guaranteed attendance numbers, coupled with the sheer expensiveness, literal expensiveness of New York City, made for a situation where another loss was highly likely for us. And add that to the team being in turmoil again, or the club, maybe even you could say, being in turmoil again, it just doesn't bode well to have a sort of jump on the success bandwagon towards the event either. You know, if you're getting to January, February, March, you're still in the mix, and then people get excited and want to party with like kin afterwards. But no, it just doesn't look like that's happening either. I'll talk a wee bit more about it when we get to the convention update then, just to kind of reaffirm some bits and pieces. But yeah, a big week, and that's quite a long introduction as a result. So let's get to some of the depressing stuff, and then we'll get to even more depressing stuff. And we've got a couple of shout outs today for some passings, which is very very disappointing, and then we'll see where we go from there. So 2 games this past week. One was great and the other not so much, and as in not so much, I mean it was an unmitigated disaster. But let's start with the positive one, and that was the League Cup quarter-final 4-0 victory over Livingston at Ibrox last Wednesday, with 2 goals from Abdallah Sima, the first where he fouled the guy so blatantly, and then the second was a big deflection, but his name is probably on the score sheet twice, so good for him. A brilliant solo effort from Ridvan Yilmaz, and then a lovely sweeping finish by Ryan Jack right at the death. It was a very competent and efficient performance, and the result definitely, I think, told the story of the game, with Livy's chances being very, very restricted. I don't think they had a shot on goal, actually, and as it turns out, this happened to be Michael Beale's last victory as Rangers manager, but it does is it sets us up for a semi-final against Hearts on the 5th of November, and interestingly we'll be playing Hearts twice in a week, with us hosting them at the end of October as well, and there's a midweek game in between that. I think it's against Dundee. So yeah, who knows whether it will be Stephen Davis and Alec Ray that are still in charge at that point. It's just over a month away here. Positives, the result and the fact that we're in the semi-finals of the competition is absolutely great. It was great to see Ridvan Yilmaz get some game time and the opportunity to make an impact on the game. And I was talking to a pal after the game. It just gives us something different, and it's quite exciting and refreshing. So more of that, please. Negatives, no real negatives at all for me for this one. A healthy 4-0 win at home is exactly what we needed, and I likely would have said something today about momentum and quietly building towards something had Saturday's game not worked out the way that it worked out, and we'll get to that in just a second here. Oh good. And stats wise, we had 69% of the possession, we had 13 shots on goal with 6 on target, and they had 2 shots on goal with 0 on target. So Jack Butland didn't have a save to make. A couple of ones just kind of flashed past the post. And the referee watch, Willie Collum, I thought did us a favour with Seema's first goal. It was a foul, and I thought the defender would for sure get the foul, but he didn't, and we all just kind of looked at each other and went, all right then, we'll take it. So for that simple fact, he's going to get a 7.5 out of 10 for that one. I'm sure he's kicking himself right now, thinking that he's given Rangers a bit of an advantage or done us a favour, I'm sure. Our second game, here we go, was Saturday's disastrous 3-1 home defeat to Aberdeen, in what was literally everything that's wrong with this current squad. Missed chances at the beginning of the game, absolutely awful defending, and that consigned us to our 3rd defeat in 7 games in the league. Our 3rd defeat in 7, 2 of them at home, by the way. And the irony is that we didn't, we started well, we didn't start badly at all. We had a number of really good chances, and if we take those chances, that completely changes the complexion of the game, by opening the scoring. But of course we didn't take any of them, and then we just diarrhea all over ourselves at the set piece, where Cifuentes doesn't track his guy at all, and he has a simple tap in. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough before the goal, cue even more time wasting from Aberdeen. I think that stuff is just disgusting. I don't mind like at the end of the game, the last 10-15 minutes, if you start to kind of go down, there's maybe some cramp, people need a wee bit of a breather, but they were doing it from the first whistle on Saturday. Like how you practice that, how you put that into play, and how you actually have that as part of your I'm a footballer is... I think it's disgusting. I don't like it at all. I wouldn't like to see Rangers do it either, so you can tell how I feel about that. But then what you could see was the cluelessness that our team has, because we had no idea how to break them down. And for their second goal, we had a situation actually in Calgary where there's a bit of an attack going on, and we start to get buffering. I run into the media room, I get it all, have to refresh the page. And then all of a sudden we're looking and they're celebrating their goal, so we didn't get a chance to see it real time. But it was even worse as than the first one, because we must have had, I don't know, 5 or 6 opportunities to clear the ball on that second one, and we just didn't take any one of them. And Aberdeen were fighting for it more than we were, and they got their second. We had a wee bit of a flurry of excitement. Well, I did anyway when we got the goal back from Sima, but we weren't done diarrheaing all over ourselves, and despite what I thought was a foul on Borna Barisic in the lead up to it, they fought more than we did, and they got the third goal, and then a 3-1 home defeat. And that's on that one game we conceded one more goal than we had lost in the previous 6 league games at home against Aberdeen. Let that sink in a wee bit then. Just absolutely awful. Positives from this game: none, absolutely none whatsoever. Negatives: pretty much everything. The lack of hunger, the lack of desire, the lack of fight, the lack of positional awareness, and the exposure from set pieces again, and then just add in the utter stupidity of Scott Wright's red card. That just did nothing for his ever diminishing reputation with the fans. It's too bad he's still here, and I don't typically say that about Rangers players, but he's not what we need at all. It was just an awful performance on the back of too many awful performances, which ultimately was the final straw for the club. And now Michael Beale is in the unemployment line, as they say. And the stats don't really tell the story of the game. Maybe they do a wee bit. We had 71% possession, 16 shots on goal with 5 on target. Aberdeen had 9 shots on goal with 6 on target. So they made our goalie work more than we made their goalie work, and then with them only having 29% of the possession, that just shows you how bad we were when we did have the possession. Awful. On the referee watch, I thought Steve McLean didn't really do us any favours with the Borna Barisic foul leading up to their third goal, quite honestly, and he continued to fall for their antics, their time wasting antics, time and again. I also thought, I'm saying some negative stuff about Scott Wright there, but I also thought that the second booking for him was a wee bit harsh. I think if that was, if that was the other way about, I'd be like, I don't know. But it's Scott Wright's own stupidity that puts himself in that position. He knows what he's doing. He knows that the risk that he's running, and he still goes and leaves his foot in a wee bit there. So just utter garbage overall. Overall, I wasn't impressed by the referee, so he's going to get a 5 out of 10 for his performance. Not the referee's fault at all that we lost this game, not even close, but he just didn't do enough to stamp down in the time wasting or anything like that. I don't think so. That's what we've got. 2 games this week, one in the Europa League and then a massive league match on the weekend. The first one is this coming Thursday, October the 5th, with a 12:45 Eastern Standard Time kickoff, 5:45 PM UK. So interesting timeline. Just don't assume that it's going to be 12:45 or it's going to be 2:45 or kind of 3 PM Eastern Standard Time like it typically is. This is one of the earlier ones, and that's of course away to Aris Limassol. And a solid result in this one's going to set us up for ongoing success in this competition. But I'm sure they'll be looking to go or get into winning ways after losing their home opener against Sparta Prague. I don't know much about this team at all, other than just having heard their name over the years. So we'll see we'll see what we get. Hopefully Alex Ray and Stephen Davis have the team pumped up and we can go and get a very good result there, and as I say, set us up for success going forward. The second game is this coming Sunday, the 8th of October, and that's a 7am Eastern Standard Time kickoff. That's noon UK, and that's away to St Mirren. And St Mirren, as you know, from the most beautiful town in Paisley, are unbeaten already this season, and they're already 3 points ahead of us. So we absolutely 100% need to win this one and go into the international break on a wee bit of a high. We all know how we went into the last international break, and that was the absolute opposite of being on a high there. So two solid results this week, and can kind of change the complexion of how we're going to start to feel about the team as we push on into the remainder of October and into the kind of pending festive period and stuff like that as well. So yep, two biggies for RTV. Similar to last wee while, and RTV still got some emails to respond to. I will try and get to them this week now that we have the New York decision behind us. And apologies if you've emailed me. We've just been so busy with the other bits and pieces that haven't had a chance to get to that. So I will definitely endeavour to do that. From a shout outs perspective, the first shout out I do have this week is the only. The only positive one actually is just to literally, and genuinely wish Stephen Davis and Alex Ray all the very best as they try to steady the ship. I think Alex Ray will get a bit of fight and dig into the team, and I've no idea how the team will take to Stephen Davis as manager. I can't see the guys making absolute wholesale changes, and they obviously don't have the troubles to seek in terms of the injuries that we've sustained to the squad thus far, but they are very respected, as I mentioned earlier, by the support, and hopefully they can do good things while they're in the role. Two bigger Rangers men you wouldn't meet, I would venture to say. The second one, on a very sad note, this was just announced this morning, the passing of NARSA honorary president and two-time president of NARSA, John Miller. We just got the news this morning, as I say, and what a lovely man John was. I met him back, I think it must have been probably about 2006, 2007, when we were planning for the first convention that we hosted here in Calgary in 2008, and John had come into town with Bobby Smith, and we had met at the Western Hotel, and they just basically gave me an overview of what the convention is, what we're trying to do at it, what's important, what's not, and gave us a wee bit of guidance and advice on what that looks like, and just great guys, just very, very down to earth, very helpful. And John was also the first person to formally congratulate me on being appointed to the NARSA executive as the VP back in 2012 as well. Very kind, genuine and polite man, and always carried himself with grace as well. I hadn't actually corresponded or talked to him in quite some time, but I did often think about him and what he did for the association. And I got a lovely note just earlier today from former NARSA president and fellow London Rangers Supporters Club a member, fellow of John, because that was the club that John was part of as well, and it was from Dave Shillinglaw. And I'm going to just read it out here if you don't mind. John and I always sat together during the games. I loved making him laugh. Please pass this on to Gary. John was without doubt one of the nicest people you could ever meet. A quiet man with a beautiful family. Been a huge part of NARSA since the beginning, the early Tam Plunkett days. President twice, a founder member of our club back in 1993. John had a very calming influence during meetings and was well respected by all who knew him. He took great care and attention in looking after Ibrox legend Sammy Cox and his wife Jean at the conventions. This is the person he was. John will be dearly missed by his family, friends at London Rangers Supporters Club and NARSA. Well said there, Dave, and yeah, please, I'd just like to pass on sincere condolences to John's family and friends from everyone at NARSA as well. And I think we'll get a chance to just chat once the news becomes more widespread known as an executive, to see what, if anything, we can do to support John's family through this as well. As I say, a thoroughly nice man. I'm so sorry to hear of his passing. And speaking of that, I also got a note earlier today about the passing of a regular NARSA convention attendee, Mags Cameron, and I'm going to just read this one out as well. It's actually from the Tory Glen True Blues Rangers Supporters Club back home, and Eddie McGrath had posted there, "It is with the deepest sadness that I have to inform the members of the passing of Big Mags Cameron this morning. Mags passed away peacefully at the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice with her family and John with her. Mags was a member of the Tory Glen bus from the early 90s and travelled home and away to Europe with the bus. She will be missed by all members. God bless Mags and look after us all from above." Just so sad. And when I'd heard it, I was, I did one of those kind of double takes, like, how do I know that name? How do I know that name? And then I checked my email, and Mags and I corresponded a lot, leading up to Vegas, leading up to Toronto as well. She had to transfer her tickets for Toronto, I assume now, due to her ailing health. But she was always so kind, so appreciative, so organised, actually, as well. And that's a real miss for the Rangers community. Again, so really, really sorry to hear that, and on behalf of NARSA, of course, I'd like to pass on our sincere condolences to Mag's family and friends and everyone at the Tory Glen True Blues as well. Oh, it's a sad one today, folks, eh? So, in terms of the convention update, obviously there's now no countdown for NARSA 2024 since the cancellation. I did say over a long period of time that I didn't recommend anyone booking anything in or around New York, and of course I did add over the past wee while that I was personally confident that we'd have some sort of event in the city, so I very obviously got that one wrong, but the numbers simply just don't lie, and they most certainly don't add up for NARSA, so we ended up where we ended up. I know of two groups of folks that did book to go to New York. One of them was my sister Debbie, of course, and the other one was some folks from the Halcyon True Blues, I believe it is, back home, Ian Crawford and team. So I'll correspond with them directly and see what we're going to do, and hopefully there wasn't too many more, if any, that went ahead and booked, and you heeded the message that I was sending out there. It is disappointing, considering the amount of time that we put in as a team for it not to work out. But I'd much rather be in that position rather than the alternative, which could be a complete financial collapse for NARSA, quite frankly. And I'm actually very, very proud of the team for having their say, sticking firm with their stance and doing what's best for the association. Overall, I did say to the team afterwards, just on our WhatsApp group that we've got, that it really does show that the sum of our parts is very, very effective and exactly is what we need. And I can tell you with certainty that the conversation would have been very, very difficult with previous versions of the NARSA executive that I've been part of, and I don't mean that in any sort of insulting or derogatory way at all to any of my previous colleagues. I just mean that this current executive, we have a very safe, open space to express our thoughts, our opinions, and that allows us to have a more expansive dialogue and conversation to get to a spot where we're all content and all content is discussed in the meetings. So and it's so very valuable for the association, and it's very, very much appreciated by myself as well. When we're having a conversation, I know that we're actually having a conversation, that we're getting everything out on the table, and that's exactly what we did last week there. So you'll probably have seen from the communication that I sent out today, there's an abbreviated version on our social media channels as well. But the one thing I did want to just spend a couple of minutes here is just an acknowledgement and thanks, and I said this towards the end of the message, to the Big Apple Bears, the Rangers Supporters Club over there in New York, for all of their hard work, their support, and their patience with us as we navigated through this. They weren't pushy, they weren't pressing us. Every now and again they would be like, "How's it going?" It seemed to be a lot of trust there that we were doing the right thing and keeping them abreast of things as much as we possibly could as we're going forward. That not every host club is like that, and it helped us. It gave us space to do what we needed to do to get to where we needed to get to as well. So on behalf of NARSA, just a huge thank you to Greg and Alec and the team over there at the Big Apple Bears. Again, just to thank the NARSA executive for the support, dedication, honesty, and the reality checking. I kind of had to get my head out the clouds a wee bit, and they helped me get there fairly quickly last Tuesday night. We were asked for quite some time about what the property was, and I can share it now. It was the Marriott Marquis, Times Square, and I just want to place on record my thanks to Christy and Andrew over there for all of their patience, their flexibility, and and then the friendship during our negotiations. They really wanted to bring the event to New York City, but they were very, very realistic with us as well, saying, look, this is just the way it works here. They educated us when they needed to educate us. They kind of set us straight when they needed to do that as well. And it was a very healthy, open dialogue that we had with them as well. So, when I phoned them last week to tell them, what we had decided, they were, genuinely disappointed. They wanted to host us, and we definitely wanted to go there. It was just such a beautiful property. And maybe sometime down the line, you never know. And then the NARSA membership and our regular guests, or those that were intending to attend, I'd just like to, apologise that we couldn't make this one happen. Of course, our membership decided that they wanted to go to New York City, and then reality can bite sometimes, and that's kind of what happened. And just with no guarantees there, we had to make the decision that we made. The early stage feedback that I've had from literally around the globe and from the club in and of itself as well has been positive. Expressing an understanding of you need to do what you need to do, and while disappointing, hopefully that makes things a little bit easier for NARSA 2025 and beyond. So speaking of NARSA 2025, no material updates to what I shared last week, as I'd mentioned. The partners and the partners with the club and with Experience Kissimmee were kind of out of town over the last week or so. So going to have a quick catch up with the club this week, and then see where we take things from there. And I'll let you know exactly where we get to when we get to that spot. Hopefully there'll be a bit of an update on that next week. In terms of other business, on the membership fees that I've been talking about for the last week while, in the end we had 3 delinquent clubs who we wrote to on the weekend to say you need to pay your NARSA membership fees by the end of the month, otherwise we will be suspending your membership, which means cutting off the RTV coverage as well. Hopefully those messages have been received, have been heeded, and we'll get that payment by the weekend here, so we're not cutting anyone off before the big St Mirren game here. So yeah, that's just kind of where we're at on that. We'll get a wee bit more diligent and better at that as we go forward season after season from this point onwards. On the communication section, quite light this week. The Gers guide was not on the Rangers website this week for some reason, so I didn't get a chance to write down what that was going to be. But if you haven't already, I would visit the Rangers TV site to see the interview with Stephen Davis, our new interim manager. That dropped today, or if you look on YouTube, that's there on YouTube as well. I imagine the team will be travelling, if not tomorrow, Wednesday morning probably, for the game in Cyprus, and then there will be a press conference, I assume Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday, something like that. The game on Thursday, of course. The press conference for the St Mirren game will be on Friday, and then the game itself is on Sunday as well. So that's Gaz's Gers guide for you, without any help from the communications department at the club, albeit they probably have been a wee bit busy this past 48 hours, so maybe they get a wee bit of a pass on that. Speaking of the Rangers website, there is an obituary for Jim Forrest on the Rangers website after the club had confirmed his passing at the age of 79 last Wednesday, and they did a really good job of his obituary as well. So I'll put a link to that in the blurb for the pod this week, and you can get a chance to check that out if you haven't already. The tickets are now on sale for the evening with Barry Ferguson and Alex McLeish on Saturday, October the 14th. So I guess, what's that? That's going to be 2 weeks on Saturday. And I did ask 5 Stars to see if we could grab a couple of tickets for a competition, and they have to check with the club, so that's a wee bit of a different arrangement than we've had before. It was typically always 5 Stars commanding the tickets, or managing the tickets I should say. So hopefully we'll get information back from there. But what we did do was we did manage to secure a couple of tickets for the Heart and Hand live show at Edmiston House on Friday the 1st of December, and that's going to be a 7 p.m. start for that. I did chat with David Edgar from Heart and Hand last week, and he confirmed that we'd be able to get a couple for our NARSA family. So we'll figure out on our social media. We'll probably do it over there and take it from there. So please keep an eye on that. We'll do connected with the game on Thursday, or maybe the game on Sunday. I'm not 100% sure. I personally would love to be there, and I'd love to be part of the show, quite honestly. Not that they've asked me, and not that they're likely to, but it's most likely not going to happen. I've got a bit of a change in career coming up here at the end of this month, and I need to watch the pennies for the next wee while as well to get all that organised. And just another wee shout out that I did also last week for the charity ball donations. When I looked at it, I did offer up my coaching services, and then when I looked at the charity website, they're asking for like weekend giveaways, spa days, like a whole bunch of grandiose things like that. So I don't think anybody's going to be too much enthused by 5 1-hour sessions with Gary Gillen of Gary Gillen Coaching. So maybe that will fall on deaf ears. I wanted to offer it up to the club anyway. It's always good to try and support where we can. Okay, my friends, that will do it for this week. As always, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to listen. This one has been a heavy one with the departure of Michael Beale, with the cancellation of the NARSA convention, with the passings that we talked about, and I hope you're not too much sadder as a result. But please do share this with whomever you think might enjoy it. And until next week, let's hope for a wee bit of calm and an upturn in our fortunes on the pitch, because right now it's feeling pretty grim, I don't mind saying. With 31 league games to go, we really need to start pulling our socks up and getting an absolutely concerted run of victories here. Until next week, my friends, please do take care of yourself, okay? All the very best. Cheerio.